Welcome into a special edition of the Fairgrounds Racing Podcast alongside Fairgrounds morning line maker and handicapper Mike Diliberto. I'm your host, Chad Schexnayder, and it's Kentucky Derby week, Mike. And what a week we have in store, culminating with the 148th Kentucky Derby that is going to set sail at approximately 6:57 Eastern time on Saturday. There were 48 races with qualifying points that brought together this field of 20. And we have some international flavor, courtesy of the Dubai-based Summer is Tomorrow and the Japanese flag bearer, Crown Pride. We have an undefeated horse coming in with a plethora of question marks to his name, and that one's name is Taba. And we have an 87-year-old coach, Dwayne Lucas, getting Ethereal Road in at the 11th hour just to add some sentimental value to this year's Derby. Throw in 3 Brad Cox runners and 3 Todd Pletchers, 2 Yachteens, 2 McPeaks, and 1 horse by the name of Epicenter. And you have the makings of what should be an epic, pun intended, run for the roses.
I agree with you. It's a great race and some really talented young horses.
Before we talk about the big races, I know you and I have gone to a lot of derbies, and actually my first trip to the Churchill Downs for the Derby was in 2000, and I was with you and Brian Brian Cranston, Gary Palmisano, Joe Sherman, Dodo was on that trip, Milius, and your dad, Buddy D, and that was some great times, those Derby trips. What do you remember most about going to the Derby, and how many did you go to? You can't even count?
Oh, quite a few. My first one was way back in 1972 when Riva Ridge beat Nola Hossie in the Derby. And then we went about 2 or 3 years early and then didn't go back till late in the 70s. And then in the late 80s, Brian started, around 90, Brian started bringing a whole group. And we went there for about 10, 12 years in a row, a whole group of us. And really, to me, the funnest part is going on the backside on Thursday or Friday morning and visiting with all of the trainers and seeing all the hoopla that's going on.
No, it's great. And, one thing that stuck out in my mind about my first Derby was it was actually in 2000 and your dad trying to say Fusaichi Pegasus.
He did about 6 takes with a stand-up for the TV show, and he'd get halfway through and then he'd mess the name up. And finally, when he got it finished, they had a group of about 10 or 15 people watching. They all started applauding.
Fusaichi Pegasus was definitely one in the Buddy D vocabulary that was hard to come by. But that was a fun Derby, and that was actually the first year that a favorite had won in like 15 to 20 years or something. The favorites, well, guess what? It's really changed because the favorites now, I believe it's like 6 out of the last 7 in the Kentucky Derby have come in, or a really high favorite. So we're going to go through the Derby runners later in the show and give you our thoughts on how we think the race is going to shape up from a lot of different angles. But we also want to touch on Friday's card in the Kentucky Oaks. That has 13 races highlighted by the Longines Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks for 3-year-old fillies. But they have 6 other graded stakes races that day. But, man, the weather does not look favorable for Friday. And I think weather's going to play a big part. It's up to 100% chance of rain on Friday in Louisville. That could play havoc with a card.
Especially the turf races, because even if they leave them on the turf, it's going to be yielding. So it makes for really hard handicapping.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the Oaks race first as we get into this here. And let's talk about the odds a little bit. I guess, what did you think about the odds on the race? The morning line odds and workouts, and we got to get into who might like a wet track for the Kentucky Oaks.
Yeah, right, with 100% chance of rain, odds are it's going to be wet. It's a really solid, a really good edition of the Oaks. Nest is the morning line favorite, and I have no problem with that. I mean, since she's come with 2 races this year as a 3-year-old, both dominant efforts in very solid times, I got to think she'll be one of the ones that you definitely have to contend with. Echo Zulu being the third choice a little bit surprised me because, I mean, she was a dominant 2-year-old champion. No one ever even challenged her, and she just ran away with everybody. And her bar numbers as a 2-year-old were better than anything in this race as a 3-year-old. But her first race back, and we all knew that even Asmussen said she was only about 75 or 80%. She wasn't cranked up enough because they got a late start with her, and she still had enough class to hold off a horse that was doing exceptionally well, Hidden Connection, and wouldn't let her go by. Since then, Echo Zulu has worked really well at Churchill Downs, and I just think she's ready for a big effort, and I think she ought to be able to handle the off track looking at her breeding. And, so I think one of those 2 is the most logical horses. Another one, Kathleen O, you can't follow a horse that's 4 for 4. So, I mean, she's a good connection. Shug McGahee, I got to think, she's got a shot in there. And I think the one I'm a little leery about is number 1, Secret Oak for Dwayne Lucas. This filly was dominating fillies over at Oaklawn Park. And then they tried her against the boys, and Cyberknife handled it pretty easily. but she was under a hard drive from the half-mile pole all the way to the wire, and it was really a hard race on her. So I'm not sure if she's going to be able to bounce back out of that race and run like her last two before that. But I just think Nest, Echo Zulu, or Kathleen No, one of those three are probably the most logical of the locals. Like you said, the wild card is the 13 horse for Todd Pletcher, another one that has never lost a race, 4 for 4, all very easily wins. And she's been here enough where way back on April 1st, she's been working in the United States. So making her debut here in the United States for good connections with Todd Pletcher and Favorite Plot, no surprise if she pops up and runs well.
Yeah, and that's Shahama that we're talking about there. And Shahama, like he said, is in the Todd Pletcher barn. I was hoping Shahama, we have a little better draw. I don't like being stuck out there in the 14 hole, but there's about a furlong and a half run to the first turn. Maybe get some position there. Echo Zulu has never been headed. And that's concerning to me a little bit with Ugiri drawn right inside with Florent Giroux. We know Florent Giroux's running style, right? He breaks and goes in these big races. I think, I don't know how dead set for the lead he's going to be, but that horse is going to show speed. I mean, she won the fantasy with some speedy numbers. I think this horse has got to show speed. Ugiri loves Churchill. 3 starts, got to win it in 2 seconds over the track. I think she's going to drag Echo Zulu with her. Can Echo Zulu rate? Probably. I mean, she's a nice filly. Does she want to rate? I don't know. She could get caught up, and they could go really fast. And then you got Vinty Valentine right to her outside, and that horse has speed. So I think you're going to see some speed real early in this race. And Echo Zulu being that horse in between, I don't know, man. I just don't like that trip if you get in between those two speed horses for an extended period of time.
I have to agree with you. There's a lot of speed in this race, but Joe Rosario is one of the best around, and I think if he sees that they're going too fast, he might just tuck back a little bit behind them and let them go, and then try to make his run coming around the turn.
Yeah, she's never been hit, like we said. Echo Zulu 5 for 5. I mean, the daughter of Gunrunner, Steve would love to win the Oaks race. He's done it a couple of times already. Mike, let's talk about Hidden Connection, because you saw her all winter here at the fairgrounds. We talked about her numerous times. I thought she was going to get there in the Oaks. I mean, it was unbelievable gutty effort on the inside by Echo Zulu just to hold her off. And Hidden Connection just kept going and galloped out really well. I saw a couple interviews with Brett Calhoun this week. He's still high on her. Raylu Gutierrez is the jockey. I don't know if the moments could get too big for this kid, but I think you could have done a couple of things different here at the fairgrounds with Hidden Connection. They leave him on for this race. I don't know, I'd like to see him jockey change, to be honest with you. But I see the point, Brett Calhoun's a very loyal guy. He's going to stick with Raylu. What do you give her chances? Because I think she's got a big shot.
I can't throw her out for the simple reason. I mean, she gave Echo Zulu all she wanted. Now, in my opinion, Echo Zulu, like I said, wasn't 100%. She was probably 75 or 80%, and just her class held off Hidden Connection. Hidden Connection was working terrifically going into that race, and she ran her race and just couldn't get there. Looking at the work since then at Churchill, I watched a couple of those online, and she didn't look like she, worked to me as well as she did coming, into that race at the Fairgrounds Oaks. But, off of that last race, she's definitely one you got to throw in the gimmicks.
So use her underneath. She's a nice price. I believe they put her 20-1 on the morning line. So Hidden Connection, she's drawn outside again. I think she's going to get a good stalking trip from out there. Whether she's good enough, we'll see. A couple other Fairgrounds horses that we're going to see. Turner Loose, who won to Rachel Alexandra. She should like that off track. Brad Cox. He goes to Manny Franco here. You don't see Brad Cox and Manny Franco team up very often. I was completely against all those horses and Rachel Alexandra, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was a very good race. Goddess of Fire, I believe, was in that race as well. And we did use Hidden Connection coming back. I just don't know about those two still. They're going to have to prove it to me. Brad Cox has obviously done well in this race, but Turner Loose, outside chance at the board, that's a toss for you.
She's a toss for me. I think the 14 hole and the fact that she hasn't shown that she can beat this caliber horse yet, I'm not using her.
Goddess of Fire is a half to Mind Control, whose horse has won a lot of money for Todd Pletcher, actually running into Churchill Downs handicap on Saturday. This horse has a lot of class. She's 15-1 in the morning line. Only one win to her credit. She was second in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, so she's been around. I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about this horse as well. She gets a rider change. She goes back to John Velasquez here. She has a third at Churchill as well in the Pocahontas, which was just an okay race, and that was behind Hidden Connection. Another one I can't see getting there. I don't think I'm going to use her either.
She's a horse that's shown improvement. She's improved in each of her last 3 starts, and she's going to have to continue to improve if she wants to run with the top 2 or 3 selections in here.
I heard you say you're against Secret Oath. I think she needs a trip. She needs that stalker pocket trip from in there. I do like the jockey change here. Dwayne Lucas goes to Luis Sagas, who's more aggressive. I think she could be a little bit over the top. If you look at some of the speed stuff and, maybe she ran her best races already and this might not be the spot for her, but she has a ton of class. And but I think with the Lucas angle, and she could be overbet in this spot. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets bet a little more than her morning line indicates at 6 to 1.
She was 7 to 5 in Arkansas Derby last time out against the boys.
Right. So, and you like Kathleen O. I'm a little against Kathleen O, to be honest with you. I know she's got the win on the muddy track. She's 4 for 4. She does like to be outside of horses, so she got a good draw. She's not really likes to run on the inside too much. I know she's done nothing wrong, but if I had to throw one out, I'd throw her out, to be honest with you. I just don't see her going 5 for 5. I think she's going to get bet down, and this is a tough race. And when the speed, I think of Churchill, I think of speed and rain on the track. I think when it's rainy, that speed tends to hold.
Oh, right.
So true. I think the closers on Friday could be up against it, and she's going to get pace, but the way that track plays, I think she might be up against it from a track standpoint. So the A horses for you are who?
I would say Nest, Echo Zulu, and I would throw Kathleen O in as my 3rd pick.
All right, so A's for me and the Kentucky Oaks would be Echo Zulu, Nest, and Shahama. And I'm also I'm gonna save a little bit with Hidden Connection. I just think she's I think she's got enough speed to be close.
She'll be underneath in some of my gimmicks.
Yeah, I think she has to be underneath there as well. So it's gonna be an interesting Friday card. With all this rain. I will tread lightly a little bit in the rain, I believe.
I will too, just because, it's a crapshoot and you got to see how the track's playing.
So let's take a break right here. We're going to come back with it. We're going to touch on all the Derby horses that are coming up for Saturday. We're going to talk about each one of them here after the break. You're listening to the Fairgrounds Racing Podcast. History in horse racing means something, and the folks at Louisiana Craft Butchers can certainly tell you about horse racing in New Orleans. Another historic element in New Orleans is the food culture, and at Louisiana Craft Butchers, they specialize in delivering the perfect meats for all your needs, whether it is a tailgate extravaganza, watching football at home with friends, or holiday feast. Louisiana Craft Butchers offers it all, from boudin, hogshead cheese, and tamales, to selling over 20 different sausages, including the New Orleans favorite Palmisano homemade Italian sausage, which is a family recipe of Angelo Palmisano Sr. and his wife dating back to the 1940s. Don't take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. Louisiana Craft Butchers out in Kenner. Check them out at lacraftbutchers.com or give them a call, 504-466-9788. That's 504-466-9788 or online at lacraftbutchers.com. Back here in the Fairgrounds Racing Podcast, Chad Schexnayder alongside Mikey D, and we're breaking down the weekend action at Churchill Downs. We just went through the Oaks, Mike, and now we're going to talk about the Kentucky Derby, and it was a very interesting draw. I think a couple things first before we lead into it. Last year was the first year with no Lasix, right? So all the preps were run with no Lasix. There's a couple of horses in here that have had Lasix a couple of times. Some have not. Have you factored the Lasix issue into your handicapping at all when it comes to these big races?
Yes, I have, because if you look at them, in fact, I'll give you a prime example is a really fast 5.5 filly, LZ, that Chris Hartman has. When she runs on Lasix, she's definitely 5 lengths faster than when she runs off Lasix. They just look at her PPs, and he's done that several times when he has to get into them stake races in Kentucky and all, and they don't let her use the Lasix. And the same horses she was beating at the fairgrounds beat her, in Kentucky. So it doesn't affect all of the horses, but it does affect some of the horses.
No, I agree with you. I think it's something you have to look at, along with post positions. And, the post positions this year is the third year we're into of the 20-horse starting gate, which is a 65-foot long gate. It doesn't compromise the inside-outside as much as it has in the past. And honestly, to me, it's more about trip, right, than post. But one note I will make about post positions, and although Big Brown won from post 20 in 2008, post 17 and higher are just 3 for 111 over the past 45 years. So post 17 and higher, I doubt that changes this year when you look at who's out there in 17 and higher. But it's just something to keep in mind, just a note. I think, it just depends. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Morning line odds, you're a morning line odds maker. I don't really, it's tough. I mean, look, it's a hard job, no doubt about it. But I would have done things a little bit differently on the morning line. What would you have made kind of those middle horses in the morning line?
Well, the only one that really jumps out at me is the Tabba, at 12-1. That's hard for me to believe that Messier would be a lower odds than Tabia. Tabia handled him pretty easily. And he's the only horse in the race with 2 triple-digit buyers in both of his career starts. And he kind of reminds you a little bit of Justify, who dominated when he came around. And, he's the wild card in here. And, I think he'll be more like 6-1. I really think he'll go down. Now, it's a tough thing to make a line with 20 horses because you got to make the points fit. And that's hard to do. And I guess, Mike might have, was forced to make somebody 12-1. That should have been a little lower. I guess he could have raised, Epicenter up to 4-1 and Zendon, 7-2. And that way he could have made Tabby to 8-1 or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just a lot of, you got to have something kind of high prices hit the board. It just always happens like that in the Derby. Prep season-wise, Mandaloun, we've had Mandaloun Louisiana Derby last year. Didn't run very well. Gets put up for the Kentucky Derby. Kind of weird, all this circumstance. But, here we got, in 2019, Country House was put up via disqualification after competing in the Louisiana Derby, then the Arkansas Derby. And this year, Epicenter is going to try to prove that the Louisiana Derby can produce a Derby winner that actually crosses the finish line first, because now we've had 2 in the past 3 years that kind of get put up. And last year, look, even with that, Mandaloun finishing second on the board, Hot Rod Charlie ran a huge race. He was third. Midnight Bourbon wasn't disgraced. And those numbers for the tribe were like 7, 8, 9, right in the middle of the field. So I think the Louisiana Derby is becoming a very key prep race. I think one of the reasons why is that mile and 3/16 and those mile and 8 to mile and 3/16. Is that prep season wise, was Louisiana Derby one of the better preps in your eyes?
I think Louisiana Derby has really shown over the last couple of years that a lot of the top trainers are bringing horses here to run because the track surface is so good and horses leave here and do so much better. And Louisiana Derby was a strong race, but to me, the strongest race was the prep race, the Risen Star Stakes. The top 5 finishes in the Risen Star Stakes are all in this year's Kentucky Derby. I don't see you can say that about any other prep race around.
No.
And, and 2 of them are the first and second choices on the program.
Yeah, it's become a key race for sure. Epicenter controlled things on the front end. That day they paid $9, and behind him was Smile Happy, who was actually favored in his 3-year-old debut, and Zandon was third, but really had no chance. He hopped at the break and had no chance. So, it's interesting. I think favorite-wise, Zandon was made the morning line favorite. Epicenter was made second choice. Let me tell you who's going to make the favoritism. A guy by the name of Mattress Mac. Because whoever he bets, I believe, is going to be the favorite. Whether he bets $4 million on Epicenter or $4 million on Zandon, I think his money is actually going to make the Derby favorite.
He sends it. We know that. And I know one thing. I'm going to have to use Epicenter as my horse, and I'm going to have to use him in several exactas and trifectas and all because, if he's 7-2, I want a little higher the price. I'd like to get that 54-1 that you got.
Yeah, so I'm sitting on the Epicenter ticket for sure. And actually, I got Cyberknife mixed up in a few exactas with a bunch of exactas, so it should be interesting. But I really believe Taba is going to be the third choice in the race. I mean, if this horse was trained by Bob Baffert, wouldn't he be the favorite?
I would think he would be the favorite.
Honestly, I think he would be the favorite in the race. He's 12-1. I think he's going to be around that maybe 6, 8-1 range. And, Mo Donegal, Messier might float up around 10-1. And I think Mo Donegal and White Abarrio, who's kind of the next in line on the morning odds, that they're 10-1. I think they're going to be higher. I really do. I think they're going to be higher than those odds. But let's go through it. I'll tell you what. Let's start at the rail. We're going to start with Mo Donegal. And kind of interesting here because last year, Mike, the rail horse was a horse named Known Agenda, and it was Pletcher and it was Irad. Second year in a row, Pletcher and Irad are stuck down on the rail. But with this horse's running style, I don't think that's much of a detriment.
Well, he's a closer. He's going to come from off the pace, and hopefully, he gets a clean break where he doesn't get shuffled back too far early. So that's the whole key with him is if he can be in the middle of the pack going into that first turn and saving that ground, he has a shot. But that's a hard thing to figure out because a lot of horses start coming over, when they're running that first thing down the stretch.
Mo Donegal, I think he's the second best closer in the race. I think behind Zandon, he's probably the second best closer. The thing I do like about him and being down there in the one hole wide, I don't think it's going to bother him. I think he can take kickback. I think he's fine getting the dirt kicked back in his face. He's going to save ground from there. He's a big play for me. He's going to be on my tickets, I think, as kind of an underneath horse. Not sure about putting him in the top spot just because closers these days haven't really won the Derby. I mean, they just haven't, but they've gotten there and hit the board. And I think he's one that you have to use in your tickets kind of underneath. And he's going to be a good price at 12 to 15 to 1. Is he somebody underneath maybe for you?
He'll probably be underneath in my third and fourth spot when I'm making a superfecta.
So he's one of Todd Pletcher's horses, and he gets IRAD. In the 2-hole, we have Happy Jack. This is for Doug O'Neill, who's won the Derby a couple of times. He's 30 to 1. Blinkers come off on this horse. He's got some slow numbers coming out of California. He's kind of sucked up for third in a couple of races out there behind a few good ones, but I just can't see this horse. He is going to have too much to do, and I think he's just overall, for Doug O'Neill, I think he just likes having the tickets to go to the Derby, and this horse got him there, and he's just going to take a shot.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, there's not much really on the Happy Jack bandwagon. He's kind of a clunk-up master with the blinkers off. I don't think I'll have him on anything. Now here's the big horse, the 3-horse Epicenter, one that we've gotten to know here at the fairgrounds. He's got to win at Churchill. He should like it off track in case that happens to come up. I was really hoping he'd draw between 5 and 15. If you listen to Asmussen talk, I think he'd like to be drawn a little more outside. He seems to get those inside draws. Curlin had an inside draw. Looking at Lee was second from the one he had an inside draw. Some of his bigger horses, Gunrunner, I think was the 5. So I mean, he knows how to be drawn inside in this race, Mike. And have you watched his works? How has he looked? I'll tell you another note on him. He's the oldest horse in the field. He's the only
January. You don't see many January foals.
He's the oldest horse in the field, born in January. Assess his chances and tell me about Epicenter.
Well, he's going to be my top pick, and he hadn't done anything wrong. He's improved in every race that he's run in his career. All 6 starts, he's improved several lengths each time. And his last 2 races were really impressive. And he looks like he's got more in the tank. He's training exceptionally well. Watched several of those works at Churchill. They were very impressive. And you got a top rider with Rosario. So I just think, and I like horses that have that tactical speed in the Derby, just because he can avoid some early trouble and be in a contending position. And like you said, the mile and 3/16 at Louisiana Derby shows that the mile and a quarter is not going to be any problem for this horse.
And look, I was in the press box for the Louisiana Derby upstairs. I watched the whole gallop out after the cameras went off. Rosario pulled him up at the track kitchen at the fairgrounds, and he still had energy. I don't think distance is an issue whatsoever with this horse. Steve is very confident in his ability. So there's a lot of ways Epicenter can win this race. How can he lose this race?
If for some reason he doesn't break really sharp and he gets pinched back a little bit further back than he wants to be early going into that first turn. But he always breaks well. So I got to think Rosario will put him out there and get him in a position early, and then he can suck back a little bit and track a couple of horses if he wants to.
So when I was looking at it, so how did he get beaten in Lecomte, right? I mean, he wasn't supposed to lose Lecomte. So I think something like what happened in Lecomte could get him beat. What I mean by that is, you got all these speed horses, and he's getting pulled along, and maybe he puts 1 away, then he puts 2 away, then he puts 3 away, and he keeps putting them away, and he's in that Churchill stretch, and here comes Zandon, or here comes somebody else.
No,
I think that's how he could get beat. He could be one of those where the next day you go, man, Epicenter ran the best race and he lost, kind of thing. A scenario like the Lecomte is probably what gets him beat if he's not able to relax off of horses. I think Steve, to be honest with you, I know it's $1 million race in Louisiana Derby and you want to win. I really believe that he knew he could go to the lead in Louisiana Derby and win.
No.
But it wouldn't have taught him anything.
They wanted to see if he can stalk and to come off the pace, and he showed that was no problem for him.
Right, and I think that was purposely done by the Asmussen camp, and that just boosts their confidence. So Steve is going to look to get that first Derby win on Saturday with Epicenter, and we think he's got a big shot. So the 4 horse is the other speed. I think is the speed of the speed in the race, to be honest with you. I think this horse is going to be on the lead, and I think he could take him a long way, and that's the 4 Summers tomorrow. It's the horse that set the pace in the UAE Derby. I have a little side bet with Scott Shapiro, a burger and a beer, on who's going to have the lead at the track kitchen as they're turning for home. And my pick is Summers tomorrow. His pick is Messier, so we'll see how that goes. But Summers tomorrow, Mike, how far can this horse take him on Saturday?
I don't think he was facing anything like the competition he's going to be facing here today. So, I think he's going to, like you said, he likes to go to the front. So I think he's going to cut off some pretty quick fractions, and I think that'll take its toll on him.
Yeah, this horse, I see this horse is out of a Badge of Silver mare, and you know how that
was Ronnie Warner. That was
my
your
horse.
man.
That was my horse. Badge of Silver mare is this horse. You don't see Badge of Silver's name popping up in pedigrees anymore, but I was thrilled to see that. But this horse is definitely on a sprint end. Has run some decent numbers, but he's going to be fast early. He was faster than Life is Good in Dubai in the first half of their races. So this horse has speed. I think he gets put away as they turning for home, but he's definitely he's probably without a chance to win or hit the board, but he's an impact on this race for sure. Smile Happy is a horse that I'm not sure. He's kind of one of the enigma horses to me because he's run grid numbers, Mike, and to be honest with you, he was the horse. How would you feel right now? 20-1 on Smile Happy. He was the favorite in every future pool coming into the winter.
And he was the favorite and Risen Star in the Bluegrass against a lot of these same horses, Epicenter and Zandon. So,
I mean, if you're sitting with if you're sitting with a ticket at 8-1 or 6-1 in the future pool on Smile Happy, what do you do in this race?
Exactly.
I mean, he's 20-1. But no, Corey Lannery's on board. What's his chances in this race for you?
It wouldn't surprise him if he popped up and ran a big race and won. He's run well over the Churchill track. And, his first race, they said he needed a race. He hadn't been out. And then the second race in the Bluegrass, he made the lead, and Zandon just ran by him, pretty easily in the last 16th of a mile. So I'm not 100% sure he wants to go the mile and a quarter. I can't throw him out, but he's not going to be one of my top couple of picks.
And I don't know. The Thoroughgraph sheets love him. He's third off the layoff. He was a precocious 2-year-old. Kenny McPeak was over the top confident in the Bluegrass, calling him, McPeak said something to the fact of, they better have a bear in there to beat me. And the next day, Chad Brown tweeted, I guess we have the bear.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny, just going back and forth with them. But he's a horse, I think, Kenny's brought him along. And look, Kenny McPeak I don't know if he's a top win contender for me. Probably not. But I can see this horse in the mold of, if he's 20-1, in that what Mr. Big News did and Stilled Regard did, that third or fourth at a high number. I think I'm going to have to use him underneath, and he's going to be in my tries and supers. Corey Lannery knows Churchill very well. This horse hasn't done much wrong. It's just, can he be there at the end and get a good trip? Zandon blew by him, like he was saying, still in the Bluegrass. So I think people see that, and maybe that's why. But, I think this horse has an outside shot to hit the board for sure. Looking at the 6th horse in the races in California, you're looking at Messier, Mike, and Messier's $470,000 purchase. I think the second highest purchase price in the race. He's got some fast numbers. He comes in for Tim Yachteen's barn now. He was trained by Baffert all the way through, but he's only besides Taba and Epicenter, he's the only horse that's thrown a triple-digit buyer number. Where does that leave him for you?
I can't throw him out. He'll be one of the ones right up there early with the pace, and but Taba went by him so easily last time. I'm not sure he wants to go a mile and a quarter. So definitely he'll be up there on the lead or right close to the lead. And depends on how fast they go. You got to give him a chance. I can't, totally throw him out, but he's not one of my top selections.
I think his race into Robert Lewis, I believe, was biased. It was just a speed track that day. That's where he got the 103 buyer. The problem I have with Messier, and I know Bob Baffert won the race twice with horses that run second in the last 2 Santa Anita Derbies. He's won in Kentucky with him. But watching the replay of that Santa Anita Derby, I don't know if Johnny V just didn't use him once Taba came in, but I didn't see that fight. You know how you see that fight from Baffert horses, or he didn't dig in. And that's concerning to me. And I heard people say, well, maybe Johnny V let up a little bit. And I don't buy that. I think the horse was getting a little tired. I didn't see that fight from Messier. And if those horses come to him and they got those good horses coming to him, I think he gives it up in the stretch. And I don't think he wants to pass horses. He's going to have a perfect trip to me to hit the board.
That's the same feelings I have about him.
So that's Messier to 6. Good post. We'll see what Tim Yachteen does, right? He's got the 2 Baffert monsters, and people are going to say, he's kind of in a weird position, right? If you're Tim Yachteen, if you do great, then, hey, you do great. And if you don't, they can blame, he can't do what Baffert does. So that's interesting. The 7 Crown Pride, and what about the buzz on this horse? He's the youngest horse in the race. He was born on May 4th. Happy birthday to Crown Pride. Happy birthday, Crown Pride, today. This horse is very intriguing, Mike. I don't know if you followed what's going on Twitter and the internet and the workout show, but man, these Japanese, they train their horses, boy.
They do train. They like to set them on the fence and let them go. And that man, he just showed him up with a 46 and 2. So he's got speed, and he's won 3 out of 4 starts. And the Japanese, they dominated over in Dubai and Saudi Arabia this year. Their horses are going everywhere and doing very well. And now they're going to try to duplicate some of that over here in the United States. To me, he's a wild card in here. It wouldn't totally surprise me if he popped up and win, but I think he still has to move forward off of his times to compete with these.
I think he does. Look, here's the positives with Crown Pride, right? He's got 3 wins at a mile and an eighth or longer, so I think he's got a ton of ability when it comes to there. Japan, they're doing very well. They're dominating. This horse is just another one to come over here. He's got a crazy workout pattern, though, and the mental side of it, I think, for him is a little crazy because 2 weeks ago, they brought him to the gate, and it was a scheduled work, and the bell went off, and he threw the rider. Most times, the dial rider got the horse. They brought him back, put the guy back on, and broke him out the gate again. Where you would be a little skeptical, they just did the same thing. They put him back in the gate, and they worked him. Okay. But, man, this horse has a ton of ability. He runs with his head really cocked. He moves his head back and forth, which I think they could put a shadow roll on him, they said, for the Derby. I don't think kickback is going to be fun for him. If he gets caught behind horses, I don't think he's going to like that. But, man, when that horse sees daylight, he runs. And he runs to daylight. And at 20-1, he's definitely a use for me. Like you said, I don't know if I'm going to have too many things ending on him to win. But I'm going to use him because I think that you could throw out that Tokyo race when he was muddy and it was a mile. I think that was too short. That was a points race in Japan. It was one of those point races. He didn't get a lot out of that. The jockey Lemaire is probably the best dirt rider in Japan. And look, this isn't a typical UAE Derby horse, right? This isn't one of those European horses like Mendelssohn. This is a Japanese horse that went over there and won the UAE Derby, and he's been here a long time, so he's gotten accustomed to it. I think the positives outweigh the negatives for me.
I can't say he's somebody that you got to keep an eye on, and and he'll be a big price.
Yeah, he's been, the workout pattern is just crazy for me, and when you watch these Japanese horses train, but he's starting to receive a lot of buzz, and I think it's well documented, and I think this horse is going to be right around 20-1 on Derby Day. The 8 horses Charge It. This is a horse that Todd Pletcher has that has only 3 starts. And you look at a win in 2 seconds. He was second in the Florida Derby. He has no 2-year-old form, which these days really doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot, to be honest with you. But this horse has a very, very sexy pedigree.
He's bred terrifically. He's been working really well since the Florida Derby. And looks like, another young horse that's on the improve. And, he ran a big race running second. He was kind of lugging in a little bit in the stretch there. But, I can't throw him out. Louis Sayers and him, he'll be one of the starkers in here. And, if he takes that next step, he's going to have to take a next step and move off several lengths. But if he does it, then, no surprise if he pops in. He's one that you got to consider throwing in the gimmicks.
He is. Tapit, he's out of Tapit, which the mental side of things, obviously not getting starts his 3-year year. He hit the gate in the Florida Derby. He was lugging in. That's all Tapit kind of stuff, right? I mean, they're crazy. And but the damn I'll Take Charge is Indian Charlie, but the mama was Take Charge Lady. Right, so Take Charge Lady, she's special filly. She's thrown a lot of good runners. Will Take Charge, and she's a bunch of 3 Grade 1 horses she's thrown. So Charge It's in that family. That was her second dam is Take Charge Lady. So she's got the pedigree. Maybe this horse figures it out for the Belmont if Pletcher goes that way. I think the Derby for him though, with the scenario, with all the people, he could be one of those horses that maybe mentally, the talent's there, but maybe not the mental side of it can carry him a long way. I'm kind of on the fence with him, but I think if it comes down to it, I'm probably leaving him out.
I agree with you.
Tis the Bomb for me, Mike, the 9 horse in this race. Another one for Kenny McPeak. Toss. I mean, it's a toss for me.
I just think his best races are on poly track or turf. I don't think he's really a true dirt horse. So, he's a toss for me also.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are starting to like him, and I think they just got Derby fever. To be honest with you, this horse probably should be heading to Ascot and running the turf over there. I think Derby Fever got the best of him. The horse is 2 dirt races. The one at Ellis Park, second time out as a 2-year-old, was a race that came off the turf. He won by 14, so he was running against turf horses there. So I don't give that much credit. And then they go to the grass and he tears it up, goes to the juvenile fillies. Gulfstream Park, they go, okay, let's go back to the dirt and the Holy Bull. And he just gets drilled. And there was no rhyme or reason. He just didn't run in the dirt. Comes back and wins the poly races. So to me, he's a toss just based on the dirt is not what this horse wants to do.
I agree with you.
The 10 horse in this race is Zandon, Mike, and he got a perfect draw. The perfect draw led to him being a 3-1 favorite in the race. I believe this horse with Flavian Pratt and Chad Brown, you're going to hear these two win a lot of races, I believe, this summer when Pratt goes to move his tack to New York. This horse reminds me a lot of Good Magic that Chad Brown had down here. I give this horse a huge shot. The problem with him is his running style.
I agree with you. He's going to have to get out and get some decent position where he don't get pinched back or get stuck in behind horses. Actually, the 10th hole is probably a good draw for him because he can kind of stay in the middle of the racetrack and not lose too much ground and not get stuck down on the inside. And his last race, I mean, he's improved in all 4 career starts. Chad Brown has got him going really good, and he was very impressive winning the Bluegrass. So I got to think he's going to give Epicenter a run this time. First time when Epicenter beat him, he hopped at the start and lost some valuable position. Still ran on well, but didn't challenge for the win. But I think him and Epicenter are my top 2 picks.
Yeah, Zandon, in his 4th start in the Bluegrass, he comes up with a 98 buyer, but it's his 3rd 90-plus buyer in a dirt route. And he's definitely fast enough. He has that rally running style that you kind of like. His lack of seasoning is a little bit of concern. Upstart failed twice at 10 furlongs in his career. The Damn Sire Creative Cause produced just one 10 furlong winner from 12 different starters. They've pegged him at 10-1, which is they pegged him at 3-1, which I don't know if you're going to take a short price on top, but he's got to be an A. I mean, it was just too impressive of a race. I think this was Chad Brown's plan all along. To start off the layoff was the Derby. This is what these guys do these days. And I think he's got a big shot, but he might be the one of those ones closing passing horses, but you don't see a lot of passing going on in the Derby stretch these days. I think Zandon's going to pass some horses for sure.
Oh no, definitely. He's got to use him. I'm going to have him in my gimmicks for sure.
Pioneer Medina drew into the field, Mike, and we know Pioneer Medina in the last 3 races for this one has come at the fairgrounds. Risen Star kind of clunks up and gets 4th, was there. Louisiana Derby was 3rd. They taken the blinkers off of him, Todd, here. He's run behind some good ones with Epicenter here at the fairgrounds. Starting to hear this horse, could stay around, could get an even trip. I don't know. I just don't think he's good enough for me. I don't think I'm going to have him anywhere. What about you?
I have to agree with him. I mean, he's faced Epicenter and Zandon and all them and Zozos and all, and he, didn't have any excuses and wasn't able to stay up with them in the last, 16th of a mile. No surprise if he might run underneath 3rd or 4th, but I really don't. I really don't have a strong opinion as him getting for the win money.
No, I don't think so. So the 12 horse now is Taba, and this horse is the $1.7 million horse. You have the no experience 2 outs by Taba, but you have Mike Smith, who has the most experience in the Kentucky Derby, as Mike Smith is, I believe he's won the Derby 3 times, and this is going to be his. I think it's his 50th mount. Oh, no, it's his 28th mount. 28th mount, he's 56 years old. The San Diego Derby has come back as the fastest prep. What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, San Diego Derby has always been a really good prep for the Kentucky Derby. And, hey, this horse is the only one with 2 triple-digit buyers in the race, and it was his only 2 starts. He could be another Justify. But, the fact that he's never faced a field with more than 6 rivals in it, this is going to be something really new for him. He's going to have a lot of horses. There's going to be some bumping going around. And Mike Smith's going to have to make sure he can get him in a contending position early and don't get too much dirt and stuff thrown in his face because that hadn't happened to him so far. So he's got a lot to overcome, but talent can overcome a lot of things.
Yeah, Justify proved that the talent could overcome. The one red flag for me with him is he missed the work after the Santa Anita Derby. And Tim Yakteen worked him 6 furlongs. He did blow out, I believe, today. They said he looked good. He moves like American Pharoah. He's got that very athletic, glides over the surface. Ears are always pricked up. He's a very smart horse. That's going to help him in this race. Can he win? I don't know. I think you have a lot of the older guard saying no way a horse can win 2 races. But look, this is why Taba can win. If you take out 2020, which the Derby was run in September, in 2015, American Pharoah had 5 starts coming into the Derby. Nyquist only had 6. Always Dreamin' had 5. Justify had 3. Maximum Security had 4. Medea Spirit had 5. And you go back, Big Brown had 3, Animal Kingdom had 4. It's not the 80s anymore. It's not the 80s.
The horses don't run as much as they used to run. They want to run every 2 months. They don't want to run every 2 weeks.
And we said if he was trained by Bob Baffert, I really believe he'd be favored. I think he's still going to be 3rd choice in the single digits. He's supremely talented. I was completely against him leading up the last couple of weeks. I've kind of changed my mind a little bit when it comes to him. I just think he's talented, and with Mike Smith on him, he's dangerous. Really, really, really dangerous.
I have to agree with you.
Now what could happen with him? It could happen with what happened last year with Rock Your World. right? I mean, he was a very lightly raced horse. Everybody loved him, and his race was over 3 steps out the gate because he got squeezed.
Right.
So, and that could be, Taba not being in that gate with a bunch of horses. It could happen to him, but he's certainly talented. I don't know if you want him to beat you. That's the problem. He's a defensive play for me in the Kentucky Derby. The 13 horse is Simplification, a horse for Antonio Sano. I like Antonio Sano a lot, man. And listen, this horse is coming out of the Florida circuit. He was third in the Florida Derby. You know the other big horse that Antonio Sano trained? You remember the big horse he had? His only other Derby starter.
I forgot.
Gunnevera.
Oh, Gunnevera, yeah. And he ended up being a good older horse, too.
Gunnevera is a very good older horse. Here's some crazy similarities. Gunnevera and Simplification, both born on the same day, February 28th. They both, and this is where it gets freaky, both Gunnevera and Simplification ran second in the Holy Bull. They both won the Fountain of Youth, and they both ran third in the Florida Derby.
And it is crazy.
Is that nuts? That is crazy. So Simplification, look, he was favored his last 2 starts, right? He was favored in the Fountain of Youth. He was favored in the Florida Derby. Sano's the only trainer I heard that said, hey, look, we had the points going into our last prep, and we did something different. And I'm not ashamed that we lost the Florida Derby. This horse has worked really, really well at Gulfstream. He's worked in the mud. He's looked great at Churchill. He's going to be 20-1. Jose Ortiz stays aboard. I know they're very different horses, Gunnevera and Simplification, but Mike, I give this horse a shot. I really do. I think he might be my long shot play.
I can't knock him. I mean, he's got an outside shot. He ran solid races, and he looks like a horse that wants to come a little bit off the pace, not where they sent him to the pace in the Florida Derby. And I think, that's what they'll do this time. I can't throw him out. I can tell you that.
The rail in the Florida Derby, he was kind of pinned on. I didn't like that part of it. But man, his gallop outs from his works are just great. And I think, Jose Ortiz, I think he's a perfect rider for this race. He's got a couple of seconds, I think, in the Derby. And Simplification is going to be a good stalker for me. I like the post. He's going to be a long shot play that I'm definitely going to use on my tickets. The 14 Barber Road is for John Ortiz. Good for him having a horse here in the Derby. Raylu gets the mount here. This horse has run a couple of times at Churchill. But look, numbers-wise, he's a clunk-up horse to me, Mike. He's just slow. I just don't see him being a factor in this race.
I agree with you 100%.
Let's go to White Barrio, because White Barrio's won the Florida Derby winner who's run a good number on the thoroughgraphs. He's actually ran a great number on the thoroughgraphs, so those sheets like him for sure. He's done nothing wrong. He's been kind of out of the picture because he hasn't been at Churchill. He's been training at Gulfstream. He just got to Churchill this week after a 17-and-a-half-hour van ride. He arrived at Churchill for Safi Joseph. Safi Joseph, a very capable trainer, won the trainer's title down at Gulfstream this winter. Do you give White Barrio a shot?
Oh, definitely give him a good shot. I mean, he's only had 2 starts as a 3-year-old, both of them very impressive wins in the Holy Bull and Florida Derby. And he looks like a horse that, the distance shouldn't be any problem for him. And like you said, he's training really well. So, no, he'll definitely be in my gimmicks.
Yeah, and look, this horse, he tuned up for the Florida Derby by beating Mo Donegal in the Holy Bull, right? So that's interesting. Now, the thing about Safi Joseph horses is they always do good in Florida, and people say they don't do good anywhere else. Safi was 1-for-41 last year at Saratoga, and all of White Barrio's 4 victories have come at Gulfstream, and his only loss came at Churchill in the Kentucky Jockey Club. So, there's that. So, but he's definitely one that I think could be getting first run on the closers in this race if he's right there.
Exactly.
So White Barrio is definitely a use for both of us in this race. The 16 horse is Cyberknife, Mike, and Cyberknife's one that we've been on for a while now too. Brad Cox called him his best chance in the Derby to have a Derby hopeful back in January. I like what they did with this horse when it comes to the Lecomte. They put him in there off that maiden win. They found out that he wasn't really mentally there yet. So they went back to the allowance race for the Risen Star Day. They won the allowance race. And then he went to Oaklawn and he just dominated and got the grade 1.
And, in the Lecomte, they had put the blinkers back on him, and he doesn't look like he likes the blinkers because now they took the blinkers back off and really ran 2 really good races after that. And like Brad Cox admitted, this was a project horse. He had a lot of green, he wasn't mature yet. He was ducking in. In fact, in the race when he won by half a length over Jeeper, he could have won by 5 or 6. He pulled himself up when he made the lead. So, but it looks like the light might have went on in his last couple of starts. And he's an improving horse, and he's been working very, very well at Churchill. Definitely going to be used in my gimmicks.
No, I think Cyberknife has to be used. The gun runner angle on him is certainly there. He's working great. He actually worked with Zozos last week, and if you look at the workouts, he was getting a little better of Zozos, and Zozos is a pretty good workhorse. So Cyberknife has grown up. He's one of those, I think you said it the right way. Maybe the light has come on for him. He needs a trip. He's going to be kind of mid-pack, I think. And Florent Giroux stays, right? Florent Giroux probably could have rose. He picked him.
He had his choice of all three of them, and he picked him.
He picked Cyberknife. So Cyberknife's one, I think as a long shot play, he's certainly intriguing when it comes to the Derby on Saturday. Classic Causeway, Mike, I don't have this horse anywhere in my tickets. He was kind of a winter horse. I don't think he's gotten that much better. And these connections have just been all over the place with this horse. I mean, first they were gonna train up to the Derby after he won the Tampa Bay Derby. Then, they made a audible call. They run in the Florida Derby. And after the Florida Derby, they say, we're not going to Kentucky. And then last week they say, oh, we're going to be in the Derby. When all that happens, it's not good.
I just think the owners want to be in the Kentucky Derby because I don't have him anywhere.
Yeah, he's going to be a pace factor. He'll be out there on the front end with Summers tomorrow, but I don't expect him to be around much in the end. Tawny Port is one, Mike, that kind of earned his way in through the Polytrack stake over the Turfway. Ran second to Tisdabomb there, and then came back, got the points into Lexington. Ran a good number. I just think this horse right now is probably a cut below. This is kind of the seahorse for Brad Cox, and Brad's even said, he'd be pleasantly surprised if this horse was around for a piece of it.
I agree with that. I don't have him anywhere either.
And he's out of the 18 hole. The Zozos, Mike, the 19 horse Zozos. Manny Franco trying to get some retribution for the horse when he ran second, the big favorite in the September Derby. Remember that horse's name? Tis the Law.
Yeah, right.
Tis the Law, where he rode that horse as confidently as you could ride a horse, and Authentic just never came back to him. So Manny Franco gets Zozos this time around in the Derby. Kind of a sprinty pedigree, right, Mike? Sprinty pedigree, doesn't have 2-year-old form. Does he have too much to overcome from the 19 hole, or can he hit the board?
I got to think he can hit the board. In fact, I think Epicenter is the horse to beat, and he ran a solid second behind Epicenter. Didn't challenge Epicenter at the last 16th. Epicenter was just too good for him, but that was his third career start and his first start in a stake race. And I think he might be a better horse coming just off the pace that he was forced to be on the lead that day because Epicenter took back on, they want to try something different to see if he could rate. And I think Zozos, being where he is in the 19, I don't think he'll be able to make the lead, but I think he'll be probably third or fourth going into that first turn. And, he ran a big race, and each race he moved up several lengths. So he's another horse that, is getting better as he runs. So I got to give him a chance to get a piece of the gimmicks.
Yeah, I think he's got an outside chance for the gimmicks underneath. The 20-horse Ethereal Road gets in for Dwayne Lucas. We touched on him briefly in the opening. This horse has 7 starts. He's one of the elder statesmen of this field with 7 starts. But look, Dwayne Lucas got in. He's just happy to be here, and I don't expect much from this horse. Maybe coming a little bit in the lane, passing a couple of horses, but that's all I'm really going to say about him.
That's about it.
So there you go. That's kind of Mike and I's take, running it all down for you. Looking at it, we talk about the starts per race, Mike, and I just found it was interesting that back in 1992, the average starts for a horse going into the Kentucky Derby was 8.5. The average starts in 2002, 10 years later, was 7.5 starts to go into the Derby. In 2012, that'll have another year. The average starts was 6.7. You see the trend here? In Justify in 2018, the average number of starters in the 20-horse field was 5.7 starts. This year, it's 5.25.
And that's all over the country. They're spacing out the races. The trainers are giving their horses, they want them actually 100% ready to roll and fire a big race, and so they take more time with them. Another thing we're talking about, a lot of local fairgrounds trainers have a lot of horses in this week at Churchill, and it surprised me when I was looking at Derby Day. We have a lot, you got Chad Brown, you got Steve Asmussen, Brad Cox, Todd Pletcher, all of these top trainers with a lot of horses. But Dallas Stewart has the most entries. He's got 9 starters in on Derby Day.
Wow. And look, Dallas popped here at the fairgrounds on the big days. He had a few winners. The Cavalry Charge comes to mind.
He's done that on Derby Day, too. He's run some big races on Derby Day.
No doubt. Definitely take a second look at the Derby horses from the Dallas Stewart stable on Derby days and on Oaks days, because that's definitely something you want to use as far as long shots go from the connections here at the fairgrounds. So, Mike, what bet are you trying to hit hard on the Derby, and who are you going to use to hit it? Are you going to hopefully be alive in verticals, or are you kind of messing around exactas and tries?
Actually, I'm in a box 5 horses in the trifecta and in the exacta, and then I'm going to take Epicenter, put him first and second with those same 5 horses for extras because Epicenter is my top pick.
So I want to bet on Epicenter, but people keep telling me, Azzarello in particular keeps telling me, why bet on Epicenter?
You got
when
52 to 1. Right, you got 52 to 1.
I got 52 to 1. That's coming back pretty nice. So I'm going to play around a little bit, but in tries and stuff like that, I think I'm going to try to get simplification in there. I'm going to try to get, obviously I think one of the horses, Modonico or Zandon, probably Zandon for me is the closer I'm going to use in there. And we'll see. I mean, Epicenter obviously has to be used. Messi, the California races, I'm not too sure. I probably have Cyberknife in there. I'm throwing a Japanese horse in there as well. I think this horse can hit the board, and he's going to be a big price, and that's kind of what you're looking for, that Crown Pride, maybe taking that Mr. Big News, the 30 to 1 spot, or Instilled Regard, that was 70 to 1. One of those horses will probably pop in there. You just got to pick the right one and see how it goes. So we appreciate y'all joining us. Mikey D and I are both going to be writing a little handicapping top 3 in our long shots for NOLA.com, and Jeff Duncan, if you want to check that out, on Saturday morning, I believe it'll be up, be published in the Advocate as well. Probably Saturday, I believe Patrick McGooey and Tom Amos are also slated to give some handicapping tips. So be sure to check that out. It should be a fun derby, fun weekend. Let's hope the weather cooperates on Saturday, Mike. And we're talking about making a couple of licks here as Saturday night comes to a close. One thing we know,
you always got a price in the Derby because when 20 horses there, it's going to be a good payout if you can hit it.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So there's our Derby preview, guys. We appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Schexnola. Enjoy Derby 148, everybody. And in the words of Mikey D, good luck with your picks.